Welcome to another episode of the History Inquirer. Today we set sail into the tumultuous waters of the Golden Age of Piracy, a period where rogue sailors ruled the waves, and the Caribbean was awash with both peril and promise. That is our topic for today, this time on the History Inquirer, you landlubbers. So, grab a seat and a pint of grog as we raise a black flag and I tell you the tale of Ben Hornigold and the Golden Age of Piracy. Arr. The year was 1713. After the signing of the Peace Treaty of Utrecht, the War of Spanish Succession was over. The Royal Navy was bankrupt due to the cost of the war and began rapidly downsizing and laying off 3/4 of its manpower on the shores of Great Britain and the Americas, leaving many without a job. Privateering commissions, which had been lucrative during the war, were now not null and void. To make matters worse, Spanish Coast Guard vessels, the Guardas Costas, continued to seize English vessels passing to and from Jamaica, declaring them as smugglers if so much as a single Spanish coin were found aboard. It also did not help that the main currency of the Caribbean were the Spanish coins. When the English sailors tried to resist, some were killed or taken prisoner. The merchant ships that were hiring did not pay the men very well, and some captains gained a reputation for being cruel and tyrannical. These captains essentially made the sailors' lives a living hell. As a result of this, there were quite a few angry and disgruntled out-of-work sailors crowding the taverns and harbors who were ready to turn pirate. Two of these men would be Benjamin Hornigold and Edward Teach, or Thatch, otherwise known as Blackbeard. And so it was during a time of mass unemployment and hardship that the Golden Age of Piracy began. Let's meet our main characters. Benjamin Hornigold was an experienced sailor and privateer, now out of work and out of options. Standing alongside him was none other than Edward Teach, a tall, imposing figure with a wild mane and black hair that featured Blackbeard. It is said that he also tied his hair up in ribbons and put lit fuses under his hat, giving him a wreath of smoke about him so that together with his fierce eyes, he looked like a fury out of hell. Both men were driven by a mix of necessity and vengeance. Together they turned to what they knew best, attacking Spanish ships and striking back at the Guardas Costas. However, they needed a civil base to launch from, which they found at Nassau, in the Bahamas, which had no government at this time. They started small by sailing the Caribbean in perigo boats or canoes, and taking lightly armed vessels. Now, periaguas were large canoes or boats common to the American South and the Caribbean for transporting cargo, or in this case, treasure. They could be propelled by oars, sails, or poles with possibly an outrigger for balance. In addition to ships, plunder, and a base, the pirates needed to find a fence for all their ill-gotten gains, which they found on Harbor Island by the name of Richard Thompson. Things were looking up for the fledgling pirate base, but something was about to happen that would lead to a massive increase in piracy. Due to the later stages of the war, the Spanish were unable to move their riches from a New World to Spain out of fear of being attacked, and the treasure was piling up. With the peace and with the mother country nearing bankruptcy due to the war, it was time to get things moving again. However, nature was not on Spain's side. As the Spanish treasure fleet was coming up the Florida coast, a massive hurricane struck the fleet of 11 ships, sending all but one of them to the bottom of the ocean. But since the fleet was not that far from shore, the treasure was still accessible, lying there for the taking. Along with the remains of 10 ships and 1,000 corpses, 7 million pesos in treasure lay scattered off the beaches of East Florida, most of it in water so shallow that a good diver could reach it all. That's from the Republic of Pirates by Colin Woodward. News of the disaster quickly spread in ever-widening circles throughout the Atlantic. The image of gold, silver, and jewels carpeting the ocean floor fed thousands of fantasies that led to a rush of mariners sailing to the Florida coast to recover some of the booty. And that's from Black Valley's Blue Waters. For one, Sam Bellamy, an English sailor living in Easton, Massachusetts, this was a godsend and the perfect launching point for a successful pirate career. Or so it seemed. After reaching the spot, however, he and his crew, including Paul J. Williams, were soon driven off by the other vessels and sailed southwest to the Bay of Honduras, where they recruited more sailors and set about seizing ships and making a name for themselves. In time, Sam Bellamy would be known as Black Sam Bellamy, with his flagship, the Whydah Galley, a former slave ship refitted with 28 guns. He and his men referred to themselves as Robin Hood's men. They would meet their end when they encountered a fierce storm near the coast of New England. The Whydah was destroyed in the storm along with most of the crew, including Sam Bellamy. And in fact, they're not that far from Easton, Massachusetts, where Bellamy was living before all this. Meanwhile, with riches glimmering beneath the waves, pirate numbers exploded. The Caribbean became a battleground, with pirate crews growing larger and more sophisticated. Tactics evolved from swift periago raids to the use of larger sailing vessels such as sloops, which are most common, brigs, brigantines, frigates, galleys, etc. The promise of gold, adventure, and escape from authority was irresistible to many. The pirate base at Nassau grew into a pirate stronghold as many sailors and rogues took to the seas in search of fame, fortune, and adventure. Van Hornigold and Number Teach seized an English sloop, the Mary, and later took a larger Spanish sloop of war, which he renamed the Benjamin and made it his personal flagship. At this time, the pirates and the Hornigold established a name for themselves called the Flying Gang. He also began to fortify the island against attack by the Spanish or British. There was a fort on the island that had been built during Henry Avery's time, which had fallen into disrepair. Hornigold and his men transferred cannon, ammunition, and supplies to the fort to rearm it in case of an attack. They also seized a Spanish ship that they ran aground and used it to shore up the island's defenses. In the fall of 1716, Hornigold and his men captured another sloop, which was swift and able to carry 6 guns. This ship was given to Edward Teach, who started going by the name of Blackbeard at this time. Soon he would become one of the most powerful pirates in the Atlantic and would succeed in blockading the port of Charlestown, otherwise known as Charleston, South Carolina. Pirate life wasn't all chaos and brutality. In fact, pirates developed their own codes of conduct. Shipboard diplomacy was common, with captains elected and major decisions put to a vote. Loot was divided according to clearly defined shares, and injured crew members received compensation. Pirates valued freedom and camaraderie, making their ships a striking contrast to the rigid discipline and cruelty of merchant vessels. Most pirates were in their 20s and had prior sailing experience and came from a variety of backgrounds, cultures, and ethnicities. Though most were from the British Isles, some were also French, Dutch, American, and African pirates, former slaves. Some were gentlemen like Stede Bonnet, some were penniless sailors like Sam Bellamy, some were former slaves, and some were in between. Some are in between, on the rich and poor scale. Now, as far as pirate clothing goes, according to historian James A. Nelson, this would mean, I get this quote from the book Black Flags, Blue Waters. This would mean loose slop trousers or breeches to the knee, a standard work shirt made out of canvas or calico, a belt from which a knife could be hung, a neckerchief or bandana draped around the neck or head, a waistcoat or short blue jacket, wool stockings, a Monmouth cap knitted from wool, or a tricorn hat. Pirate weapons would include multiple pistols, like hung from a sash or from the hip, as well as swords, preferably cutlasses, also boarding axes, muskets, blunderbusses, the original shotgun, grenades, and sleep pots, etc. Daily life included music, gambling, and storytelling. Pirates flew the infamous Jolly Roger flag, the one you see behind me. That's actually Calico Jack Rackham's flag. And it was not just a symbol of terror, but it was a badge of identity and rebellion. The black flag signaled to the target ship that they should surrender and prepare to be boarded or risk fighting a pirate ship, or they could flee. They also flew the flags of other countries to disguise their intentions, though that wasn't that often. They really wanted the display of fear, the terror, to coerce a target ship to surrender without a fight. They didn't want to punch holes in the prize or get holes punched in the own ship. They didn't want to lose men. So they also used a red flag that would have signaled to a target that no quarter was to be given. The Golden Age of Piracy produced a cast of memorable characters beyond Hornigold and Blackbeard and Bellamy. Charles Vane, notorious for his ruthlessness and refusal to accept pardons, ruled Nassau for a time. And you know this, especially if you watched the series Black Sails. Also, Ambani and Mary Weed, disguised as men, fought fiercely alongside their male counterparts. As far as female pirates are concerned, these two are the only ones that have been documented. There have been other female pirates throughout history, like Grace O'Malley, but we only know about a handful. Calico Jack Rackham, famed for his flamboyant style, sailed with Bonnie and Reed. Like I said, that's his flag right there. Yeah. Each of these pirates contributed to this era's mystique, their stories blending fact and legend. Pirate activity dramatically altered life in the Caribbean and beyond. Trade routes shifted as merchants sought safer passage. Colonial governments scrambled to respond, fortifying ports and hiring privateers to hunt pirates. For local populations, pirates were both feared and welcomed, sometimes providing a source of commerce, sometimes bringing chaos. The British, Spanish, French, and Dutch all vied for control, yet for a brief moment, pirates held the upper hand. Every age comes to an end. By the 1720s, governments launched determined campaigns against piracy. The British offered pardons to those willing to surrender, while the Navy hunted down holdouts. Hornigold accepted a pardon and became a pirate hunter himself. Blackbeard met his end in a bloody battle off North Carolina. Naval power and colonial cooperation eventually drove pirates from their havens, marking the close of this wild chapter. By 1726, the number of pirates had dwindled drastically to only a few holdouts. Yet the Golden Age of Piracy endures in our imagination. Stories of buried treasure, secret codes, and daring raids continue to fascinate. Novels, movies, and video games revive pirate myths, sometimes blurring history and fantasy. The era's legacy is complex, blending rebellion, hardship, and the quest for freedom. So, as we lower our black flag and finish our pints of grog, let's remember why this story matters. The Golden Age of Piracy is more than adventure. It's a tale of resilience, ingenuity, and the search for justice in an unjust world. Pirates challenged the powerful, built their own societies, and for a fleeting moment, reshaped the tides of history. Thank you for joining me on this voyage. Until next time, keep your compass true, your sails full, and your curiosity boundless. This has been the History Choir. Farewell, ye land lovers.